What's up YouTube, and welcome to my guide to drafting 101. Somebody came in my stream a few days ago and asked me actually how he needed to draft, and it made me wonder because explaining how to draft in 2 minutes time out of the top of my head is not gonna cut it, because there's a lot of things that come into place when you need to draft. So I decided to make this guide on a Google document. I'll be adding the link down below in the description so you can just check it whenever you want. And in this guide we'll be going over the basics that you need for drafting, also some advanced stuff, but mainly the basics. And note that these are guidelines. There are some variables that come into play that just comes from playing this game a lot and watching other people draft as well. Especially HTC, you'll find the best drafts in there. So without further ado, let's jump straight into our guide, which I have divided into 4 topics. The first one is going to be your team. Know what your team needs you to play. And it's especially important the later you are at picking a hero in a draft. Every team generally exists out of 4 types of roles. You want to have a tank, a support, a main damage dealer, and a bruiser. And the 5th spot is generally actually open. Most heroes will fit in that 5th spot. And some examples that we have here are Anupirak, Rhaegar, Vala, Dihaka as the bruiser, and Genji fitting that 5th spot. But it could also be Diablo, Uther, Li Ming, Illidan, where Illidan is fitting in the bruiser spot. A melee assassin could do it at some point. You want to make sure that every draft you at least have 2 frontliners. And then the 5th spot getting filled by a specialist arbiter. Or it could even be a Stitches, Ariel, Vala, Sonya, with the 5th spot being Uther, and you're playing with a hyper carry Vala. If we look to our match history actually, which I have opened here, every game you'll notice we have a tank, a bruiser, the support, and 2 assassins. Every Hero League game, we've put it on Hero League, Arthas, Anupirak, Arthas, Garrosh, Diablo, Leoric, Diablo, Sonya. Even if we go a bit more down, we are finding Garrosh, Diablo here, Illidan fitting in the bruiser spot here, Blackheart's Bay, especially a good map for Illidan, with the Diablo, and Leoric, Dihaka. This is your main team. You always want to have 1 melee assassin or bruiser, a tank, a support, and then you want to have that main damage dealer. And the 5th spot can be open, as I said. After you've decided what your team needs on roles, there are some secondary stats that come into play. These 4 types. First of all, your team needs engage, and this is going to come down to the bruiser and the tank. For example, if you're playing with an Arthas, Arthas is a great hero, is one of the top tier tanks at this moment. However, Arthas is lacking engage. If Arthas wants to force a team fight, he needs to walk up to the target and try to root them, and any team is gonna expect that. So if your team has drafted an Arthas, it would be wise to draft something else which has hard engage. It could be Stitches getting the team fight to you, or Diablo just diving in there, and Anupirak diving in there. And the same goes for Chen. I mean, Chen has the mobility to keep up with the target, but he does not have the hard CC to lock down a target so your team can follow up on that. So Chen can't really prepare a good engage, where for example Muradin can just jump in and stun. So that's something to be aware of. And the second part also comes down to warriors generally, and that is peel. Your team needs peel. If someone first picks Stitches, which is great at engage, but you're gonna lack peel because Stitches doesn't have the peel. The only thing he could actually do potentially is take Engorge, engorging one of the enemy heroes away from your assassin. But that's all. So if you're playing with the Stitches, it might be wise to get an Anupirak, get a Diablo, get an Arthas, something with great peel. Arthas with the roots and the slows. If the enemy team is hard engaging, Arthas is really good there. So those are the first 2 points coming into place for warriors. And the third is gonna be wave clear. Especially if you're playing on maps like Tomb of the Spider Queen, if you're somewhere at the bottom of a draft, always look if your team has enough wave clear. If your team doesn't and you're not picking any wave clear, you are gonna struggle early game. You're gonna get out-rotated by the enemy team. And the 4th part is solo laning, and that sort of collides with wave clear. The solo laner is something special because every map needs a solo laner. Not every map is as important for the solo laner. For example, Cursed Hollow, you don't need to win your lane, it's not going to be that important compared to Brix's Holdout, where if you win your lane, you actually have a 50% chance of losing early game. So that's something to take in consideration, but generally that solo laner also wants to have some wave clear to be able to soak by himself. And that's the first point. Know what your team needs you to play. And the second part's already getting a bit more difficult. It's counter-picking the enemy team. And also in this, you can only counter-pick or what the enemy team has drafted so far. For example, the most easy part is probably for the support. If you're a last pick support, and that's gonna happen a lot in Hero League. There are a few supports in this game, and most people do play Assassin or even a Warrior. So if you're last picking the support, always be looking to what kind of damage the enemy team has. Do they have burst damage? You're gonna need burst healing. Or at least some sort of save mechanic. Do they have sustain damage? You're gonna need sustain healing. For example, if you're gonna play an Uther against Lunera, you're just gonna cry. Because there's no way Uther is able to deal with the Lunera poke damage, where Stukov is just gonna laugh it off. The second thing that is really important is, does the enemy team have dangerous CC? If they do, you are gonna need cleanse. For example, a Chromie or Temporal Loop, you are gonna need cleanse. And even if the enemy team is picking a Chromie, but you're not sure if he's going Temporal Loop or Slowing Sense, if they're picking a Chromie, they're probably gonna pick CC as well to set up for Chromie. And then you're still gonna need that cleanse. So be aware of you need cleanse or not. The second role is the tank, and this is already a bit more tricky. One thing you could take into consideration is, does the enemy team have really high mobile heroes? Do they have a Genji, a Tracer, a Li Ming? I mean, Arthas is not going to do much against these heroes, whereas Varian, a taunt onto Genji, could mean a kill for your enemy team. The second part is, does the enemy team has a real divey team? If the enemy team is really divey, and they're playing, for example, with a double Warrior and Illidan and Li Ming, you're gonna struggle to peel with Stitches. You're gonna struggle a lot to peel with Stitches, especially if you got a solo tank kit, which still happens in Hero League. So you would preferably draft Anoop. Getting that rep wreck on Genji or getting that double stun on Illidan is something you are gonna need to keep your allies alive. Stitches can't do anything against a high divey team, right? Or Arthas is really good against high divey teams as well. So take that in consideration. Is the enemy team drafting a real divey comp, or are they more sustained? If they're more sustained, they're not really divey, they want to play the poke game. Stitches getting the enemy hero into your team, so forcing them to either engage or back off and give you the kill, is really good. The third role is going to be the role of Assassin. And for Assassin, it sort of works the same as the first point of the support role. If the enemy team already drafted the support, you could look to whether the enemy support is burst or sustain healing. If you're gonna pick Chromie into Uther, he is able to heal up your poke damage every single time. Of course, not taking other enemy heroes or your heroes into consideration, but generally Uther is able to heal up poke damage or burst damage from the Chromie. Where Gul'dan against Uther is gonna do wonderful. The continuous sustained damage from Gul'dan is something Uther can't really deal with. So you could also draft to counter the enemy support. Another part could be squishy heroes. Does the enemy team have a really squishy backline? Are they missing some peel? Punish them by getting burst heroes. Punish them by getting, for example, Tracer or Siratuk against that Kelta, Sigara, Morphurian backline. If they have a squishy backline, you're really in a good position by drafting heroes who can take advantage of that. And of course, it's always important to know what kind of heroes your specific hero is weak against. If the enemy team has picked an Arthas, picking a Grey main is not necessarily the most wise thing to do. If the enemy team has picked a Varian, getting Tracer is just stupid at that point. Or if the enemy team has Cassia, you do not necessarily want to play the Illidan. And this is something that takes experience. I mean, there are a lot of heroes who are sort of quite good against a certain hero. And you just gotta know that by playing a lot. But you gotta be aware of them. And the fourth is a little bit more special. It's gonna be the solo laner. As I already said, being a good solo laner can either win or lose you the game. On Rex's holdout, where early game is so important. Counter picking the enemy solo laner is just vital. However, there's a really good Twitch streamer already made a guide about this. He's called RiomaGG. He made a really good spreadsheet. I've posted the link in this Google document. All credits go to him, and where he's explaining every solo matchup with some tips, and I really recommend you checking that out. I will not go into detail because you can just read his guide about that. The third is going to be situational power picks, and this is actually one of the first things you want to be looking for if you are first pick, because you can't take your team in consideration unless your team is actually all pre-picked already and are really forcing on playing those heroes. and you don't know what the enemy team is going to play. So going for the power picks is important, especially since there are so many power picks in this meta that the enemy team has no way of banning them all out. There are power picks who are generally really good. For example, Arthas is really good, Rhaegar is really good, Genji is generally really good. But there are also power picks that are really map specific. For example, you could pick Nasiba over Gaslo on any map, but you're not gonna pick the Haka on Haunted Mines, while he is really strong on Curse Hollow. I've made for every single map a tier list on my HeroesHearth page. I've posted the individual links on this Google document. I can't post one link because it's a little bit buggy at the moment, but for example, if we're just gonna open, let's say we're gonna open Tomb of the Spider Queen. And I just show you guys, let's open a new tab. If my internet is working. There we go. I have a tier 1. Heroes who are really good on this map are Gul'dan and Sul. Good Raveclaw. I've posted the explanation down below. Esmeralda is really good on this map as well. Johanna is one of the only maps. Johanna is slightly better than her other maps. Sylvanas has some value, although Sylvanas is tier 3. And for example, if we're gonna get here, we're gonna go to Hanamura. Brightwing is tier 1. Brightwing is really strong. If you can't get Brightwing, getting the Brightwing Falsta is nice. Push heroes are really strong, even after the sort of, let's call it Hanamura nerf. It's probably going to be the specialist nerf. They're still good. And 0-2 is going to be decent on this map as well, just pushing the payloads. And actually, if the enemy team is playing with a Bribe, it's really easy to get pickoffs. So you can just read this guide. I've posted an explanation why that hero is a power pick on that map, all on my HeroesHearth page, so just check it out. I also got an overall tier list you can check out. So definitely do that. It will help you getting those first power picks. And the last point is probably the most advanced point. This is the synergy. When you know what your team needs, you know what the enemy team needs, you know what the power picks are, you can base your last choice on the synergy you're gonna have with the rest of your team. And there are different kind of synergies. You have synergy in ultimate use. For example, getting a 0-2 in your team with Void Person just asks for some hero that can take advantage of a Void Person. And that hero could be Jaina. Jaina Ring of Frost is generally really hard to hit, and most heroes will actually just avoid your Ring of Frost unless you placed it excellent. However, getting a VP on 4 or 5 people is quite easy. You just blink in, you get that VP off. And you can release it whenever you want. So Jaina can just put a Ring of Frost down, and at 0-2 you release it. So there's a big synergy between the Void Person and Ring of Frost. And the same goes, for example, on Medivh's Leyline, followed up by the Diablo APOC. We all saw it in HTC. That Diablo APOC, time it right, followed up by Leyline is just strong. Getting a 5-man stun in there with APOC, it could win you the team fight. So that's some synergy with ultimates to be looking for. You also have synergy with heroes, natural synergy with heroes. For example, you could go a Tracer with Tussador. Tracer with Tussador is quite easy to pull off. I mean, as Tussador, you just gotta place your shield on Tracer, and it's gonna help Tracer a lot. Just getting that extra health to stay in the team fight longer, but also get that health regen, like the lifesteal on those shields, is really nice for Tracer. However, there's also a bit more difficult synergies you can pull off. For example, Diablo Torrent. Diablo Torrent is probably one of the oldest synergies we have in this game. Getting a Diablo charge, overpower, throw them back into a Torrent stun is capable of securing you that kill. It could even be on a Genji if you time it right. So that is a really strong combination. However, it requires some work. A third example could be Chromie with Xul. If you're gonna play Chromie, you do want to have some kind of CC to just set up the Chromie. And Xul CC is probably the easiest to predict by Chromie because she's gonna get a 1.5 second notice. In my opinion, Uther deserves its own category. The reason behind is that D-Shield has synergy with so many heroes. It can be used defensively, but in my opinion you want to use D-Shield to enable your other heroes. For example, D-Shield works great with Butcher, with Illidan, with a Dragonblade Genji, but it could also work with Greymane Sonya. Maybe a little bit less value, but still really good. When your team has draft on Uther, I guess you could ask in chat, mate, are you going Divine Storm or D-Shield in Hero League? However, if you're gonna pick Genji, they should never go Divine Storm. I mean, D-Shield is just so strong, so just locking in a Genji with a D-Shield is gonna be really viable. And also, if one of your teammates has to pick Butcher, get Uther. Uther is not only a really great hero to play with Butcher, he's also a great counter to Butcher. So get that Uther, help your team out there. And those are basically the 4 points you want to be looking for if you're drafting. Of course, there are some other small minor points, some more variables, and that just comes from playing the game a lot and watching a lot of videos, watching Twitch, watching HDC and stuff. So definitely do that. But I hope this guide actually helped you all. If you like it, please like and subscribe to this channel. I'll be posting more of these videos in the upcoming future. And take care then, guys. Have a good one.